The first thing I noticed was the padlock. It was not mine. It hung on the hasp of my package shed like a shiny silver tumor, catching the early morning light at the end of my gravel lane. I stood there with my coffee cooling in my hand, staring at a master lock I had never purchased, never installed, and certainly never authorized. The shed itself was a modest structure I had built 2 years earlier. Cedar siding, a sloped metal roof, just large enough to hold a week's worth of deliveries without cluttering my porch or exposing boxes to the Oregon rain. It sat at the property line where my private lane met the county road, a practical solution to a practical problem. I had sunk the posts myself, mixed the concrete, framed the walls, while my late wife Elena watched from the porch and told me I was overbuilding it. She had been right, as usual. I overbuild everything. That shed could survive a small tornado, but it could not survive a padlock I did not own. I set my coffee on the hood of my truck and walked closer. Through the small window I had installed in the door, I could see the interior was packed, not with my packages, with dozens of boxes. Brown cardboard, white shipping labels, Amazon Smile logos, FedEx pouches, UPS envelopes. Stacked on the floor, wedged against the walls, piled on the single shelf I had built for my own deliveries. None of them were addressed to me. I tried the door. The padlock held. I tugged once, felt the cold metal resist, and let go. I did not yank. I did not curse. I took a picture with my phone. Then I walked back to my truck, finished my coffee, and drove to the hardware store to buy bolt cutters. That was my first mistake. I should have called the sheriff right then. But I was still operating under the assumption that this was a misunderstanding, a prank, a delivery driver error. I did not yet understand that Karen Bellingham, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, had decided my private property was now a community asset. And I certainly did not know that in less than 72 hours, she would accuse me of stealing a laptop from a shed I could not even open. The bolt cutters made short work of the padlock. The hasp was undamaged. I swung the door open and the smell of cardboard and packing tape washed over me. I counted the packages. 37. 37 boxes and envelopes addressed to 17 different addresses, all within the Willow Creek subdivision. My property was not inside Willow Creek. My 5 acres sat adjacent to it, separated by a narrow strip of county-owned drainage easement and a row of old Douglas firs. I had bought the land 12 years ago, with Elena, before the subdivision even existed, before the HOA was incorporated, before Karen Bellingham had ever set foot in Oregon. We built our house at the end of a private lane that the county had never accepted for maintenance. The lane was mine. The shed was mine. The gravel under my boots was mine. And now, apparently, the package delivery hub for the entire neighborhood was also mine, whether I wanted it or not. I carried the first armload of packages to my truck. It took 4 trips to clear the shed. I stacked them neatly in the bed, covered them with a tarp, and drove to the Willow Creek Community Center. The building was a low-slung beige structure with a fake stone facade and a sign that read, Willow Creek HOA, a community of neighbors. I had never been inside. I had no reason to be. I was not a member. I parked in the visitor lot, left the engine running, and carried the first stack of packages through the glass double doors. The receptionist looked up from her computer with the blank expression of someone who had seen too many angry residents and not enough coffee. Her nameplate read Deb. I set the packages on the counter. These were in my shed, I said. My private shed. On my private lane. Not in Willow Creek. Deb blinked. I'm sorry. What shed? The package shed, at the end of my lane. The one I built 2 years ago. The one someone put a padlock on. She looked at the packages, then at me, then at the packages again. I don't understand. Those are supposed to go to the community package hub. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. There is no community package hub. There is my shed, on my property, which I built. Deb's expression shifted from confusion to something more guarded. I think you need to talk to Mrs. Bellingham. I think I do. Karen Bellingham arrived 20 minutes later. I recognized her immediately from the HOA newsletter that somehow always ended up in my mailbox despite my repeated requests to be removed from the mailing list. She was tall, blonde, dressed in a cream-colored blazer that probably cost more than my first truck. She carried a clipboard, always a clipboard, and walked with the brisk, purposeful stride of someone who believed the world would stop spinning if she did not personally supervise it. She did not look surprised to see me. She did not look surprised to see the packages. She looked annoyed, as if I had interrupted something far more important than a property rights violation. "Mr. Callahan," she said. Her voice was polished, practiced, the voice of someone who had chaired 100 meetings and lost none of them. "I was wondering when you would come by. You put a lock on my shed. The board voted to designate your shed as the official package hub for Willow Creek. The delivery trucks were causing too much congestion on our streets. Narrow roads, you understand. Safety issue. We sent you a letter." "I did not receive a letter. It was mailed last Tuesday." "I did not receive a letter," I repeated. "And even if I had, you cannot vote to designate my private property as anything. I am not in your HOA. My land is not in your HOA. My shed is not in your HOA." Karen smiled. It was the smile of someone who had dealt with difficult people before and had always won. "The shed sits at the entrance to our community. It is the natural collection point. The carriers have already been notified. This is happening, Mr. Callahan. We can do this the easy way or the hard way." I looked at her clipboard. I looked at the packages on the counter. I looked at Deb, who was suddenly very interested in her computer screen. "The hard way," I said. "I choose the hard way." I left the packages on the counter and walked out. Behind me, I heard Karen say something to Deb in a low voice. I did not catch the words. I did not need to. I already knew what she was thinking. She was thinking I would back down. She was thinking I was just another homeowner who would grumble and comply. She was thinking the clipboard and the blazer and the board vote were enough. She was wrong. But I did not know yet how wrong. I drove home, parked the truck, and walked back to the shed. The padlock was gone, but a new one had appeared in its place. A heavier one. A commercial-grade disc lock that would require more than bolt cutters. Taped to the door was a laminated sign. It read, "Willow Creek Community Package Hub. Authorized access only. By order of HOA Board." Below it, in smaller print, "Site Manager, Karen Bellingham." I stood there for a long moment, looking at that sign. The morning sun was higher now, filtering through the firs. The gravel was damp from the overnight mist. Somewhere in the distance, a delivery truck rumbled down the county road. I took a picture of the sign. I took a picture of the lock. I took a picture of the shed from every angle. Then I walked back to my house, sat down at my kitchen table, and opened my laptop. Elena's photograph watched me from the bookshelf. She had been gone for 3 years now. Cancer, the kind that moves fast and gives no quarter. She had been the one who wanted this property, this house, this life, at the end of a private lane. She had stood in the clearing where the house now sat and said, "This is where we grow old, James. We did not get to grow old together." But I was still here, and I was not going to let some HOA president with a clipboard take what Elena and I had built. The first thing I did was check my security cameras. I had installed a 4-camera system after Elena died, partly for security, partly to give myself something to do in the empty hours. One camera covered the shed, one covered the lane, one covered the front porch, one covered the workshop. I pulled up the footage from the previous 3 days. What I saw made me stop the video and rewind twice. On Tuesday morning, at 7:14 a.m., a white Lexus SUV pulled up to my shed. Karen Bellingham stepped out. She was carrying a clipboard, of course, and a laminated sign. She walked to the shed, tried the door, found it unlocked, and spent several minutes inspecting the interior. Then she made a phone call. I could not hear the conversation, but I could see her gestures. Pointing at the shed, pointing down the lane, nodding, smiling. At 7:38 a.m., a locksmith van arrived. At 7:52 a.m., the first padlock was installed. At 8:03 a.m., Karen taped the laminated sign to the door. At 8:15 a.m., the first delivery truck arrived. The driver looked confused. Karen spoke to him, gestured at the sign, handed him something. A piece of paper, a letter, I could not tell from the angle. The driver nodded, unloaded 3 packages, and placed them inside the shed. Karen locked the door behind him. The same scene repeated throughout Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Different carriers, different trucks, FedEx, UPS, Amazon, DHL. Each time, Karen or someone from the HOA was there to redirect them. Each time, the packages went into my shed. Each time, the lock clicked shut behind them. I sat back in my chair. The coffee had gone cold hours ago. I was not angry. I was not even surprised. I was something else, something quieter, something Elena would have recognized. I was preparing. The folder started that afternoon. I went to my workshop, the one Elena had called my overbuilt sanctuary, and pulled a plain manila folder from the filing cabinet. I labeled it HOA Package Shed with a black marker. The first thing I put in the folder was a printed screenshot of Karen installing the lock. The second was a printed copy of the laminated sign. The third was a timeline of events, typed in 12-point font, with exact times and dates. Then I called the county recorder's office. The woman who answered was named Patricia. She had been working for the county for 31 years and had the patient, unhurried voice of someone who had seen every property dispute imaginable. "I need to confirm something," I said. "My property at 1572 Callahan Lane. Is there any recorded easement, covenant, or access agreement that gives Willow Creek HOA any rights to any portion of my land?" Patricia took my parcel number and put me on hold. I listened to the hold music, a tinny instrumental version of a song I could not identify, and watched the afternoon light move across the workshop floor. Sawdust from my last project still dusted the workbench. A half-finished birdhouse. Elena had loved birds. "Mr. Callahan?" Patricia came back on the line. "I've checked the records. Your parcel is clean. No easements, no covenants, no access agreements. The only recorded document is your deed, dated 2011, and a survey from the same year. Your property is not part of Willow Creek subdivision. Never has been." "Thank you," I said. "Can you email me a confirmation of that? I can send you a certified letter if you prefer." "Both," I said. "Please." The certified letter arrived 3 days later. I added it to the folder. By then, the situation at the shed had escalated. The new padlock was still there. The laminated sign was still there. And now, a small folding table had appeared next to the shed, staffed by a young man in a Willow Creek HOA polo shirt. He was checking IDs and logging packages. A clipboard, always a clipboard, sat on the table next to a 3-ring binder. I watched from my porch with a pair of binoculars. The young man looked uncomfortable. He kept glancing down my lane, as if expecting me to appear. I did not appear. I watched. I documented. I added to the folder. The first confrontation happened on a Friday. I walked down to the shed at 9 a.m., carrying a thermos of coffee and the folder under my arm. The young man, his name tag read Tyler, looked up with the expression of a gazelle who had just spotted a lion. "Good morning," I said. Good morning, sir. You are on my property." Tyler swallowed. "I'm just following instructions," Mrs. Bellingham said. "I know what Mrs. Bellingham said. I have it on video." I gestured toward the camera mounted on the shed eave. "That camera has been recording since Tuesday. It has recorded every delivery, every lock change, every conversation. It is currently recording this conversation." Tyler looked at the camera. He looked at me. He looked at the road, as if calculating the distance to safety. "I'm going to call Mrs. Bellingham," he said. "You do that." Karen arrived in her white Lexus 12 minutes later. She did not look annoyed this time. She looked angry. The polished veneer was still there, but underneath it, something sharper was showing. "Mr. Callahan, you are interfering with HOA operations. I am standing on my property. You are the one interfering. The board has voted. The hub is operational. Residents are depending on it. Residents are depending on a shed I built, on land I own, without my permission. That is not an HOA operation. That is trespassing." Karen's jaw tightened. "I have a letter from the board authorizing this. I have a deed, a survey, a certified letter from the county recorder confirming no easements, no covenants, and no HOA jurisdiction. Which document do you think carries more legal weight?" She did not answer immediately. The clipboard was clutched against her chest like a shield. Tyler had retreated to the folding table and was pretending to organize the binder. "This is not over," Karen said finally. "I am aware of that." I turned and walked back up the lane. Behind me, I heard her voice, low and furious, speaking to Tyler. I did not look back. I did not need to. The folder was getting thicker. The second escalation came that evening. I was sitting on the porch, watching the light fade through the firs, when a car pulled up the lane. Not Karen's Lexus. A different car, a blue Honda Civic with a dented rear bumper and a Willow Creek parking sticker on the windshield. A man got out. He was in his mid-30s, wearing a rumpled button-down shirt, and the expression of someone who had been sent on an errand he did not want to run. "Mr. Callahan?" "Yes. I'm David Morrow. I live at 42 Willow Creek Drive. I'm missing a package, a laptop. It was supposed to be delivered yesterday. The tracking says it was left at the community hub. He gestured toward the shed. I need to check if it's there. I stood up slowly. The porch boards creaked under my weight. The shed is locked. I do not have the key. The HOA installed the lock. You will need to speak to Karen Bellingham. David's expression flickered. She said you had the key. She said you were the one managing the hub. I felt the cold thing in my stomach again. She told you I was managing the hub. Yes. She said you volunteered your shed for community use and that you were handling the package distribution. I walked down the porch steps. David took a half step back. Let me be very clear, I said. I did not volunteer my shed. I did not authorize the HOA to use my shed. I am not managing anything. Karen Bellingham installed a lock on my private property without my permission. She is the one who has been redirecting carriers. She is the one who has the key. If your laptop is missing, you need to ask her where it is. David stared at me. The confusion on his face was genuine. He was not part of this. He was just a guy who had ordered a laptop and wanted to know where it was. She said, she lied. David stood there for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. I could hear Karen's voice on the other end, tinny and distant. David's side of the conversation was mostly listening, punctuated by short, frustrated responses. But you said, no, I'm at the shed right now. He says he doesn't have the key. Well, someone needs to. Okay, fine. He hung up. She says she'll meet me here in 20 minutes with the key. I will be here. Karen arrived in 18 minutes. She was not alone. A man I did not recognize was with her. Mid-50s, balding, wearing a Willow Creek HOA polo shirt, and the resigned expression of someone who had been dragged into a situation against his will. Karen introduced him as Richard, the HOA property manager. We will open the shed, Karen announced, as if she were granting me a favor. Mr. Morrow needs to check for his package. Open it, I said. I did not move from the porch. Richard produced a key, the key to the disc lock, and opened the shed. The interior was even more packed than before. Packages were stacked 3 deep, some of them crushed by the weight of others. David Morrow began searching through the piles, checking labels, muttering tracking numbers under his breath. It took him 7 minutes to go through every package in the shed. His laptop was not there. It's not here, he said. His voice was tight. The tracking says it was delivered here yesterday at 2:15 p.m. Signed for by K. Bellingham. Karen's face went still. I signed for several packages yesterday. I don't remember a laptop specifically. It was a $1,500 laptop, David said. I need it for work. Where is it? I'm sure it's here somewhere. Let me check the log. Karen walked to the folding table and opened the 3-ring binder. Tyler, who had been standing awkwardly by the table, began flipping through pages. Yesterday's log, Karen said. 2:15 p.m. FedEx delivery. 4 packages. Signed by me, but I only logged 3 into the shed. What happened to the 4th? David asked. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that fills a room before something breaks. Karen looked at Tyler. Tyler looked at the binder. Richard looked at his shoes. I looked at all of them from my porch, coffee in hand, folder on the railing beside me. I don't know, Karen said finally. There must have been a mistake. Perhaps the driver took it back. The tracking says delivered, David said. Signed for. By you. I sign for dozens of packages every day. I can't be expected to remember every single one. You can be expected to keep track of a $1,500 laptop. David's voice was rising now. I want to know where my package is. If it was stolen, I'm filing a police report. Karen's composure cracked, just slightly. A flicker of something. Fear, maybe? Or the realization that this was spiraling beyond her control. No one stole anything. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation. The reasonable explanation, I said from the porch, is that you set up an unsecured package hub on private property without the owner's permission, without proper logging procedures, without security cameras, except mine. And now a package is missing. That is not a mystery. That is a predictable outcome. Karen turned to face me. The polished veneer was gone now. What remained was raw anger. This is your fault. If you had just cooperated, none of this would have happened. My fault, I repeated. You trespassed on my property. You installed a lock on my shed. You redirected carriers without my knowledge. You listed yourself as site manager on a facility you do not own. And now a package is missing, and you are blaming me. You refuse to participate in the community solution. I am not in your community. David Morrow was looking back and forth between us, like a spectator at a tennis match. Richard had pulled out his phone and was typing something, probably a desperate text to someone who could extract him from this situation. Tyler had closed the binder and was edging toward his car. "I'm filing a police report," David said again, "and I'm going to tell them exactly who signed for my package." He got in his Honda and drove away. Karen stood by the shed, clipboard in hand, face pale. Richard cleared his throat. "Karen, maybe we should—" "Not now, Richard." She turned back to me. "This is not over. You keep saying that. Because it's true. The board will hear about this. We will take appropriate action." "What action?" "You have no jurisdiction over my property. You have no authority to fine me, lien me, or sanction me. You have nothing except a padlock on a shed you do not own and a missing laptop that you signed for." Karen did not answer. She got in her Lexus and drove away. Richard followed in his own car. Tyler was already gone. I stood on the porch for a long time after they left. The evening had deepened into full dark. The porch light cast a yellow circle on the gravel. The shed sat at the end of the lane, door still open, packages still visible inside. I walked down and closed the door. I did not lock it. I had no key. But I did take another picture. The folder was getting thicker. The next morning, I called the delivery companies. I started with FedEx, since David Morrow's laptop had been shipped through them. I asked for the local distribution center and was transferred 3 times before I reached someone who could help. Her name was Angela. She was a delivery supervisor for the regional hub. "I need to report an unauthorized delivery redirection," I said. "Packages addressed to Willow Creek residents are being delivered to my private property at 1472 Callahan Lane. I did not authorize this. The HOA president, Karen Bellingham, has been redirecting carriers using a letter that claims my shed is a community package hub." Angela was quiet for a moment. "Can you hold, please?" I held. The hold music was different from the county's, something with more bass. When Angela came back, her voice had changed. It was more careful now. "Mr. Callahan, I'm looking at the delivery instructions for Willow Creek subdivision. There's a note in the system. It says all packages for Willow Creek addresses should be delivered to the community hub at 1472 Callahan Lane. The authorization letter is on file. It's signed by Karen Bellingham as site manager. I am the owner of 1472 Callahan Lane. I did not sign that letter. I did not authorize that redirection. Karen Bellingham does not own my property and has no authority to manage anything on it." Another pause. "Mr. Callahan, this is unusual. The letter lists your address as the hub location. It has a signature. It has the HOA letterhead. The letter is fraudulent. I have a certified letter from the county recorder confirming that my property is not part of Willow Creek HOA and that no easements or access agreements exist. I have video footage of Karen Bellingham installing a lock on my shed without permission. I have documentation of everything." Angela took a breath. "I need to escalate this. Can you send me the documentation?" "I can send it right now." I emailed her the folder contents while we were still on the phone. Scanned copies of the county letter, screenshots from the security footage, photographs of the padlock, the laminated sign, the folding table, a timeline of events. Angela received the files and was quiet for a long moment. "Mr. Callahan, I'm going to flag this for our legal department. In the meantime, I'm putting a hold on all deliveries to that address. No more packages will be redirected to your shed until this is resolved. Thank you. And, Mr. Callahan, you should know that the missing laptop, Mr. Morrow's package, was scanned as delivered and signed for. If it wasn't stolen from the shed, then someone who had access to the shed took it. Our system shows the signature was captured electronically, K. Bellingham. I am aware. This could become a legal matter. I am counting on it." I hung up and added the call notes to the folder. Then I called UPS. Then DHL. Then Amazon Logistics. Each call followed the same pattern. Each carrier had the same fraudulent authorization letter on file. Each carrier had been redirecting packages to my shed based on Karen Bellingham's signature. Each carrier was now flagging the address and halting deliveries. By the end of the day, the package flow to my shed had stopped. The folding table was still there. The binder was still there. The laminated sign was still taped to the door. But no new packages arrived. Tyler did not show up for his shift. I sat on the porch and watched the empty lane. The silence felt like progress. The third escalation came on Monday. I was in my workshop, working on the birdhouse, when I heard a vehicle coming up the lane. Not a car. A truck. A heavy truck. I stepped outside and saw a sheriff's department cruiser parked next to the shed. A deputy was examining the padlock. Another car pulled up behind the cruiser. David Morrow's blue Honda. David got out, followed by Karen Bellingham. Karen was holding her clipboard. Of course. The deputy was a woman in her 40s, with short gray hair and the calm, assessing gaze of someone who had spent years dealing with neighborhood disputes. Her nameplate read, Deputy Vasquez. Mr. Callahan? She called as I approached. Yes. I'm here about a reported theft. Mr. Morrow says a laptop was stolen from this shed. Mrs. Bellingham says you have been interfering with the community package hub and may have information about the missing item. I looked at Karen. She met my gaze with the confident expression of someone who believed she had finally gained the upper hand. Deputy, I said, there is no community package hub. This is my private shed on my private property. I built it 2 years ago. Mrs. Bellingham installed a lock on it without my permission and began redirecting delivery carriers here using a fraudulent authorization letter. I have documentation of all of this. Deputy Vasquez's expression did not change. Do you have that documentation with you? I do. I walked back to the house and retrieved the folder. When I returned, I handed it to the deputy. She opened it and began reading. Karen's confident expression flickered. Deputy, this is a civil matter. The HOA board voted. Mrs. Bellingham, Deputy Vasquez said, without looking up. Please let me review the documents. The silence that followed was heavy. David Morrow stood by his car, arms crossed, watching. Karen shifted her weight from one foot to the other. The clipboard creaked in her grip. Deputy Vasquez read the county letter. She examined the security footage screenshots. She studied the photograph of the laminated sign. She read the timeline. When she finished, she closed the folder and looked at Karen. Mrs. Bellingham, did you install a lock on this shed? The board authorized. Did you personally install a lock on this shed, on property that does not belong to you, without the owner's permission? Karen's mouth opened and closed. It was a community decision. That is not what I asked. Deputy Vasquez turned to me. Mr. Callahan, do you want to press charges for trespassing or property damage? I considered the question. The lock had not damaged the hasp. The shed was intact. The trespassing was documented but not violent. Not at this time, I said. But I want the lock removed. I want the sign removed. I want the table removed, and I want Mrs. Bellingham to explain to Mr. Morrow where his laptop is. Deputy Vasquez nodded. She turned back to Karen. Mrs. Bellingham, I strongly suggest you remove your property from Mr. Callahan's shed immediately. As for the missing laptop, that is a separate matter. Mr. Morrow, you can file a theft report, but based on what I've seen here, the person who signed for the package is the person you should be asking about it. Karen's face went pale. I didn't steal anything. I'm not accusing you of theft, Deputy Vasquez said. I'm saying you signed for a package that is now missing. That makes you responsible for it. Whether it was stolen from the shed or lost through negligence, the signature is yours. David Morrow stepped forward. I want my laptop or I want the money to replace it. $1,500. I don't care who pays it. Karen looked at him, then at the deputy, then at me. The clipboard was shaking slightly in her hands. This is absurd. I was trying to help the community. The delivery trucks were blocking the streets. The board voted to use my property without my permission, I said. That is not a vote. That is theft of services. And now it is theft of a laptop, apparently. I did not steal the laptop. Then where is it? No one answered. Deputy Vasquez handed the folder back to me. Mr. Callahan, I'm going to note this incident in my report. If you change your mind about pressing charges, you can contact the department. Mrs. Bellingham, I suggest you consult with an attorney before making any further decisions about other people's property. She got in her cruiser and drove away. David Morrow stood by his Honda, staring at Karen. I'm going to the board meeting, he said. I'm going to tell everyone what happened, and I'm going to demand that the HOA reimburse me for the laptop. He drove away. Karen and I were left alone by the shed. The morning sun was higher now, burning off the last of the mist. The firs cast long shadows across the gravel. You think you've won, Karen said. Her voice was quiet, but the anger was still there, coiled beneath the surface. I think you made a series of mistakes, I said. The first was putting a lock on my shed. The second was signing for packages you could not secure. The third was lying to your residents about who was managing the hub. The fourth was filing a fraudulent authorization letter with multiple carriers. The fifth was accusing me of theft in front of a sheriff's deputy without evidence. I didn't accuse you. You told the deputy I might have information about the missing item. That is an accusation, and it is a false one. Karen did not respond. She turned and walked to her Lexus. The clipboard was still in her hand. She got in the car and drove away. I watched her go. Then I walked to the shed, removed the laminated sign, and threw it in the trash. The padlock was still there. I would deal with it later. The folder was almost full. But the real document, the one that would end this, was still waiting. The carrier contract. I had not known about the carrier contract until Angela from FedEx mentioned it during our second phone call. She had called me back 2 days after our initial conversation, her voice carrying the careful weight of someone who had just uncovered something significant. Mr. Callahan, our legal team reviewed the authorization letter. They also reviewed the delivery contract that Mrs. Bellingham submitted to establish the community hub. The contract uses your address, 1472 Callahan Lane, as the designated delivery point. It lists Karen Bellingham as site manager, and it includes a liability waiver that holds the carriers harmless for any loss or damage to packages left at the hub. I was sitting at my kitchen table. The folder was open in front of me. Elena's photograph watched from the bookshelf. She signed a contract using my address. Yes, the contract states that the site manager, Mrs. Bellingham, has the authority to designate the delivery location and assumes all responsibility for package security. It also includes an indemnification clause. If a package is lost or stolen, the site manager and the organization they represent are liable, not the carrier. The organization they represent, I repeated. The Willow Creek HOA. Yes. And because the contract uses your address without your authorization, and because Mrs. Bellingham listed herself as site manager on property she does not own, our legal team believes the contract may be voidable. But more importantly, it establishes that Mrs. Bellingham knowingly misrepresented her authority to multiple carriers. That could constitute fraud. I wrote down every word. Can you send me a copy of that contract? I'll need to clear it with legal. But given that your property is involved, you should have standing to request it. I'll let you know. The contract arrived in my email 3 days later. 12 pages, dense legal language. But the key sections were clear. Section 2.1. The site manager warrants that they have full authority to designate the delivery point and to bind the property owner to the terms of this agreement. Section 4.3. The site manager assumes all liability for packages from the moment of delivery to the delivery point. Section 7.2. Any dispute arising from this agreement shall be resolved through binding arbitration, with costs borne by the party found to be in breach. And at the bottom of page 11, a signature line. Karen Bellingham, site manager. Below it, a date, the date she had first installed the lock. I printed the contract. I highlighted the relevant sections. I added it to the folder. Then I called the HOA property manager. Richard answered on the third ring. He sounded tired. Mr. Callahan, I was expecting your call. Were you? Karen told me about the deputy, and the missing laptop, and the carriers halting deliveries. The board is concerned. The board should be concerned. I have a copy of the carrier contract that Karen signed. She used my address without authorization. She listed herself as site manager on property she does not own. She assumed liability for all packages. And now a laptop is missing, and the HOA is on the hook for it. Richard was silent for a moment. Can you send me that contract? I can, but I want something in return. What? A special board meeting, open to all residents. I want to present my documentation. I want Karen to explain, in public, why she thought she could commandeer my property, and I want the board to vote on whether to continue supporting her actions. Richard exhaled. I'll talk to the board, but Karen is the president. She controls the agenda. Then tell the board that if they refuse, I will file a fraud complaint with the county. I will sue the HOA for trespassing and unauthorized use of property, and I will provide my documentation to every resident who had a package go missing. The liability for those packages falls on the HOA, not on me. The contract makes that very clear. I'll call you back. He called back 2 hours later. The special meeting was scheduled for Thursday evening. The community center, 7 o'clock. All residents invited. Thursday arrived with a gray sky and a light drizzle. The kind of Oregon evening that made the firs look dark and the gravel look slick. I dressed in clean jeans and a button-down shirt. I put the folder in a waterproof briefcase. I drove to the community center and parked in the visitor lot. The parking lot was full, more cars than I had ever seen at the community center. I recognized David Morrow's blue Honda. I recognized Tyler's sedan. I recognized Karen's white Lexus, parked in the spot marked President. The meeting room was packed. Folding chairs had been set up in rows, and every chair was occupied. More residents stood along the walls. The board sat at a long table at the front of the room. Karen was in the center, clipboard in front of her, gavel in hand. Richard sat to her left. The board secretary, a quiet woman named Margaret who I had seen at previous meetings but never spoken to, sat to her right, a laptop open in front of her. The other board members flanked them, expressions ranging from nervous to resigned. I took a seat in the back row. The folder was in my lap. Karen called the meeting to order. Her voice was polished, controlled, the voice of someone who had chaired 100 meetings and expected to chair 100 more. "We have a full agenda tonight," she said. "But first, I want to address the package hub situation. As many of you know, the board voted to establish a community package hub to address the congestion caused by delivery trucks on our narrow streets. The hub was located at the entrance to the community, and it has been operating successfully for over a week." A murmur went through the room. David Morrow stood up. "Successfully? My laptop is missing. I filed a police report. The deputy said the person who signed for it is responsible. That's you, Karen." Karen's gavel tapped the table. "Mr. Morrow, we will address individual concerns during the open comment period. Please sit down." "I'm not sitting down. I want to know where my laptop is. The laptop is being investigated. We believe it may have been misdelivered. The tracking says delivered, signed by you. Where is it?" The room was getting louder. Other residents were murmuring, shifting in their seats. I saw several people checking their phones, probably looking up their own tracking numbers. Karen's gavel tapped again, harder this time. "Order, we will have order." "Let him speak," someone called from the back. "Yeah, I had a package go missing too," another voice added. "A pair of shoes. Tracking said delivered to the hub. Never got them. My medication was supposed to be delivered Tuesday. Still waiting." The room was slipping out of Karen's control. She looked at Richard. Richard looked at his notes. Margaret, the secretary, was typing rapidly, her face unreadable. I stood up. The room quieted slightly. Karen's eyes found me, and something flickered in them. Fear, maybe, or recognition that the moment she had been dreading had arrived. "My name is James Callahan," I said. "I own the property at 1472 Callahan Lane. The shed that Mrs. Bellingham designated as the community package hub is my private property. I built it 2 years ago. I did not authorize the HOA to use it. I did not volunteer it. I did not agree to manage it." I walked to the front of the room. Karen's gavel hovered, but she did not bring it down. "Mrs. Bellingham installed a lock on my shed without my permission. She posted a sign listing herself as site manager. She filed authorization letters with FedEx, UPS, DHL, and Amazon Logistics, redirecting all Willow Creek packages to my address. She signed a carrier contract that used my property without my authorization and assumed liability for all packages delivered there." I opened the folder and pulled out the contract. This contract lists Karen Bellingham as site manager. It warrants that she has full authority to designate the delivery point. It assumes all liability for packages from the moment of delivery, and it indemnifies the carriers against any loss or damage. I held up the contract so the room could see it. I did not sign this contract. I did not authorize this contract. My property was used without my knowledge or consent, and now packages are missing, and the HOA, which means all of you, the residents, is legally liable for those losses. The room erupted. David Morrow was on his feet again. I knew it. I knew she was lying. "How many packages are missing?" someone shouted. "Who has the key to the shed? Why wasn't this voted on by the whole community?" Karen's gavel was pounding now, but no one was listening. Richard was trying to speak, but his voice was drowned out. Margaret had stopped typing and was watching the chaos with an expression that might have been satisfaction. I waited. The folder was still in my hand. The contract was still visible. The room slowly quieted as people realized I was not finished. "I have documentation," I said. "Security footage of Mrs. Bellingham installing the lock. A certified letter from the county recorder confirming that my property is not part of Willow Creek HOA and that no easements or access agreements exist. Copies of the fraudulent authorization letters sent to carriers, and the carrier contract itself, which I obtained from FedEx's legal department. I placed the folder on the board table. I am not a member of this HOA. I have never been a member. My property has never been part of this subdivision. But I am a neighbor, and I am telling you as a neighbor that your board president has exposed this community to significant legal and financial liability. The missing packages are just the beginning. If someone had been injured on my property while picking up a package, the liability would have fallen on me, except the contract Karen signed might have shifted it to the HOA. If the carriers decide to pursue fraud charges for the unauthorized use of my address, the HOA could be named as a defendant. This is not a small mistake. This is a pattern of misrepresentation that could cost this community thousands of dollars. Karen's face was white. The gavel was still in her hand, but she was not moving. Richard was staring at the contract as if it might bite him. Margaret had opened a new document on her laptop and was typing again. I am not here to sue anyone, I said. I am here to ask the board to do the right thing. Remove the lock from my shed. Remove the sign. Remove the table. Issue a written apology to me and to every resident whose package was misdirected, and hold Mrs. Bellingham accountable for the decisions she made without proper authority. The room was silent now. David Morrow was still standing, arms crossed, watching Karen. Other residents were nodding. A few were taking pictures of the contract with their phones. Richard cleared his throat. I move that we vote to remove the lock and all HOA property from Mr. Callahan's shed immediately. Seconded, Margaret said. Her voice was quiet but clear. All in favor? Richard asked. Every board member raised their hand except Karen. Opposed? Karen raised her hand. Her face was still white, but her jaw was set. The motion carries, Richard said. Mrs. Bellingham, please provide the key to Mr. Callahan. Karen did not move. Karen, Richard said. The key. She reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out a single silver key. She placed it on the table. I picked it up. There is one more thing, I said. The missing packages. The contract Karen signed makes the HOA liable. I recommend the board establish a process for residents to file claims for lost or stolen items. The HOA's insurance may cover it. If not, the HOA will need to pay out of its reserves. Another murmur went through the room. How much are we talking about? Someone asked. I don't know, I said, but Mr. Morrow's laptop alone is $1,500. If other packages are missing, the total could be significant. David Morrow stepped forward. I want to make a motion, as a resident. Richard looked at him. The floor is open for resident motions. I move that the board remove Karen Bellingham as president, effective immediately, and appoint an interim president until a special election can be held. Seconded, said a woman in the front row. Seconded, said another voice from the back. Seconded, said Tyler, who was standing by the door. Karen's gavel clattered to the table. You can't do this. I've been president for 6 years. I built this community. You built this mess, David said. You lied to us. You used someone else's property without permission. You lost my laptop. You exposed us to lawsuits. You're done. The board voted. 4-1. Karen was removed. Margaret was appointed interim president. She accepted with a quiet nod and immediately began typing what I assumed were meeting minutes. The meeting adjourned at 9:47 p.m. I walked out of the community center, into the drizzle. The folder was under my arm. The key was in my pocket. Behind me, I could hear the residents still talking, still arguing, still processing what had happened. David Morrow caught up with me in the parking lot. Mr. Callahan? I turned. I wanted to apologize, he said, for coming to your house that night, for believing what Karen told me. I didn't know. You know now. Yeah, I do. He hesitated. Do you think I'll get my laptop back, or the money? The HOA is liable. File a claim. If they deny it, you have the contract as evidence. You can take them to small claims court. David nodded. Thank you for exposing her. A lot of us have had problems with Karen for years, but no one ever had the proof to do anything about it. I had the proof because I kept records, I said. That is the only reason. I drove home through the rain. The lane was dark, but the porch light was on, casting its yellow circle on the gravel. The shed sat at the end of the lane, still locked, still full of packages that had not been picked up. I used the key to open the disc lock. I removed the lock and the hasp and threw them in the trash. Then I opened the shed door and looked at the remaining packages. 23 of them. Addresses I recognized from the meeting. People who had not known their packages were here. People who had been waiting for deliveries that never came. I spent the next hour loading the packages into my truck. Then I drove through Willow Creek, dropping each package at its correct address. Some residents came to the door, some did not. The ones who did thanked me. The ones who did not would find their packages in the morning. The last package I delivered was to David Morrow's house. Not his laptop, that was still missing, but a smaller box from an online retailer. He came to the door in pajamas, looking surprised. "Found this in the shed," I said. "It has your name on it." He took the box. "Thank you." Again. "You're welcome." I drove home. The rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking up, revealing a few stars. I parked the truck, walked to the shed, and stood there for a moment. The door was open. The interior was empty. The laminated sign was gone. The folding table was gone. The binder was gone. The shed was just a shed again. Cedar siding, sloped metal roof. A practical solution to a practical problem. I closed the door. I did not lock it. I did not need to. The next morning, I installed a new lock. My lock. A combination padlock that only I knew the code to. I also installed a new sign. It read, "Private property, no trespassing. Packages for 1472. Callahan Lane only." Below it, in smaller print, "All other deliveries will be returned to sender." I stood back and looked at the shed. It looked right again. It looked like mine. The aftermath unfolded over the following weeks. The HOA sent me a formal letter of apology, signed by Margaret as interim president. The letter acknowledged that the board had acted without proper authority and assured me that no further attempts would be made to use my property. I added the letter to the folder. The missing laptop was never found. David Morrow filed a claim with the HOA's insurance company. The claim was initially denied, but after he submitted a copy of the carrier contract, which I provided, the insurance company reversed its decision and paid the full $1,500. Other residents filed claims for missing packages. The total came to just over $4,000. The HOA's insurance premiums increased by 30%. Karen Bellingham resigned from the board entirely 2 weeks after the meeting. She sent a letter to all residents blaming external interference for the package hub failure and insisting that her intentions had been pure. No one believed her. She put her house on the market 3 months later. I heard from Richard that she moved to Arizona. The carriers updated their systems. My address was removed as a delivery point for Willow Creek packages. The fraudulent authorization letters were flagged and voided. Angela from FedEx called me to confirm that the legal department had closed the file. "You handled that well," she said. "Most people would have just gotten angry." I was angry, I said. I just didn't show it. The shed is still there. It still holds my packages. The camera still records. The folder is still in my filing cabinet. A thick manila record of everything that happened. I do not look at it often, but I keep it. Because paper remembers what people try to forget. Some evenings, I sit on the porch with my coffee and watch the light fade through the firs. The lane is quiet. The shed is locked. Elena's photograph is on the bookshelf inside. I think she would have been proud of how I handled it. She always said I was too patient, too quiet, too willing to let things go. But she also said that patience was not weakness. It was preparation. She was right. A clipboard is not a deed. A sign is not a survey. A threat is not a title. And silence is not surrender. It is just the quiet before the truth speaks.